Shalom. Wow. Look down for a second, look back up, and a bunch of people are here. All right, so going to be going over Isaiah chapter 54. We're going to be breaking Isaiah chapter 54 down. We've done this once before. I'm going to do it just because I don't have it posted on the YouTube channel, and I want people that are on YouTube to be able to get the same revelation, if you will. But again, just keep in mind that I'm just simply trying to point everybody in the right direction. So my goal is not to give you every answer in here. My goal is to take Isaiah 54 and show you how to take one page at a time in Scripture and literally break the Scripture down. And you'll see just in the first verse of Isaiah 54, verse 1, how much there is to just one line of Scripture. And as we break this down, you're going to start to see more and more of a picture. But then I would strongly urge you to go and read Isaiah 54 for yourself, and then understand, like yesterday when we were doing a teaching, we had somebody come on. Unfortunately, the teaching didn't get completed. However, you got to see the difference between somebody who knows prophecy and understands the Word of God versus people that are smart in their own mind, head knowledge. So this isn't anything of my own intelligence or any of that. It's all from Scripture. It's all what Yahweh gives me. So again, we went through this a while back. We're going to go through it again today, and I'm going to show you just the basics. So please go study this stuff afterwards, but just know that we're in Isaiah 54, but I'm going to be giving a lot of references from other prophecies, Revelation and other books as well, so that you can start piecing the things together that you need to piece together in order to understand what's going to take place during the end. So we're going to start off in Isaiah 54 verse 1. It says, "Sing, O barren, thou that didst not break forth into singing and cry aloud, thou that didst not travail with child. For more are the children of the desolate than the children of the married wife, saith Yahweh." All right, so there's a lot just in this right here, just to break down. So as we start to break this down, please write these things down. Revelation 12:5 through 6. So this is the first part of that. "And she gave birth to a son, a man-child, who is to rule all of the nations with a rod of iron. And her child was snatched away to Yahweh and his throne. Then the woman fled into the wilderness, where she was to be placed and prepared by Yahweh, so that they might take care of her for 1,260 days." So again, understanding what's taking place from what we just read in the very beginning, this was talking about a woman travailing, as in birth. I have to be careful what I say on here, especially with when we're talking about birth, because that got us booted off last time. This male child that's born with a rod of iron, who's snatched away, and the woman who's in the wilderness. We're going to start breaking this down and answering what exactly is it talking about, right? Next scripture. Revelation 14. "Then I looked, and behold, the Lamb was standing on Mount Zion, and with him were 144,000, who had his name and his Father's name written on their foreheads. And I heard a voice from heaven like the roar of rushing waters and the booming of thunder. The voice I heard was like a harpist playing the harps. And they were singing a new song before the throne and before the four living creatures and before the elders. And no one was able to learn that song except the 144 who had been redeemed from the earth. These are the ones who have not defiled themselves with women, for they are virgins. They are ones who follow the Lamb wherever he goes. They have been redeemed from among mankind as the first fruits, for God and the Lamb. In their mouth was found no lie. They are blameless." So if we jump back up to where we were reading in Revelation 12:5 through 6, it's talking about this man-child who was to rule all of the nations with a rod of iron. What is that speaking about? Well, when we're looking at Revelation 14, it tells us. It says, "Then I looked, and behold, a lamb was standing on Mount Zion with 144,000." So this man-child and this rod of iron, this is speaking of the 144,000, but this is a prophecy that's being broken down. It's telling a story within a story. So Isaiah 54 is literally speaking on the end days, the end times, right? So as we go through, more and more will start to click, but also we see there's quite a bit in here. It's talking about a song that no one else can learn, right? It's a new song, which we'll go through here shortly. But the main thing that I want you to pick up from the very beginning is they're breaking forth into singing. They're crying aloud. It's talking about a woman travailing in birth, right? And again, I have to quit saying that, or they're going to kick me off of here. I don't know how else to say that. I'll just talk when I'm referring to that. I'm just going to say a woman in labor, and then it's speaking about the 144 that were redeemed from the earth. Okay, so let's go to Luke 1:5-6. Luke 1:5. It says, "There was in the days of Herod, the king of Judea, a certain priest named Zacharias of the course of Abia, and his wife was the daughter of Aaron, and her name was Elizabeth. And they were both righteous before Yahweh, walking in all the commandments and ordinances of Yahweh, blameless." So, for all of the Christians and people out there that don't believe that we can walk before Yahweh blameless when we're walking in his laws, statutes, and commandments and keeping the testimony of the Messiah, think again, because Scripture just told us very clearly that it's possible. But this right here is what this is speaking about in Revelation 14. It says, "And in their mouth was there no lie, for they are blameless." So this simply is speaking of, it says a lot of things right here. It says that they're virgins, they follow the Lamb wherever he goes. This means that they're not chasing after other gods. They're solely committed to the Messiah. They're walking in his footsteps, and they are the first fruits. These are the ones that were chosen. Okay, so I just wanted to point that out, that this in Luke is telling us that if we walk in the commandments of Yahweh and keep the testimony of his son Yeshua, then we are walking blameless. Now, what else does it say in verse 1? It says that they're crying aloud and they're singing, and then we see that in verse 4, Revelation chapter 14, verse 3, it says, "And they are singing a new song before the throne and before the four living creatures." This new song that they're singing is the song of Moses, right? So this song of Moses, it's actually quite beautiful. It's in Revelation 15. Let me read this. It says, "Then I saw another great and wonderful sign in heaven, 7 angels who have the 7 plagues, the last one, for with them God's wrath is finished. And I saw something new, like a sea of glass mixed with fire, and those who had overcome the beast in his image and the number of his name standing by the sea of glass, holding the harps of Yahweh, and they are singing the song of Moses." So, where do we find the song of Moses? Let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 32. I might not read the entire thing. I'd like to, but I also have time constraint today. So if you start, that's quite a bit. It's 52 verses. If you go through the Song of Moses, write that down, Deuteronomy chapter 32. If you go through here, you're going to start seeing everything that's in the Song of Moses is talking about turning back to the ways of the Most High. So a lot of the people that are in the church today are teaching that the law's been done away with. We don't have to follow the Sabbath. We don't have to keep the commandments of Yahweh. We don't have to walk like his son. All we have to do is confess his name. Yet, in the end, the very end, the time that we're living in currently, it's telling us very clearly that there will be 144 chosen that'll stand up and they'll start singing a new song. They'll get people to turn back to the ways of God, right? This is what this is speaking on. And again, we're still just in the first verse. This is still Isaiah 51 or 54 verse 1. We haven't even left that yet. Let's see. I'm just going to read, let's see. I'll read verses. Let me finish reading through Revelation 15 as well. I'm going to read a little bit more, but it says, great and wonderful are your deeds, just and true are your ways, O King of nations. Who shall not fear the glory of your name, O Lord? For you alone are holy, and all the nations shall come to worship before you, for your righteous acts have been revealed. So we see up here at the very, very top, it's talking about that at the very end, and this is the sea of glass that people are talking about. It's talking about the firmament, right? So the sea of glass that everyone is standing on, they're looking down, the 144,000, they're looking down and they're watching certain things taking place, coming to pass. And it says that they're holding harps and they're singing this new song. And then as we get down a little further, it's talking about all the nations shall come to worship before him. Before who? Well, as we read up here earlier, it was talking about this lamb standing on Mount Zion, and with him were 144. So many of you guys have heard this already, but we've talked about how when Yeshua touches down on Mount Zion, the 144 will be with him. And then on the new earth, the 144 become the new priesthood. So it's 12,000 from each tribe that are the first fruits that are chosen, and they go out and teach the law to the remnant of Jacob, right? So the remnant will be separate from the 144. The 144 are bought free, just like the Levitical priests were in the Old Testament, where Yahweh tells Moses, the Levites are mine, right? So in the same way that Yahweh tabernacled with men in the Old Testament, it'll be similar to that in Revelation 21, 1 through 5. We see John saying New Jerusalem coming down out of heaven. And Yahweh will then tabernacle with man again. But it'll be much different because we'll actually be with him. All right, so again, we're still in the first verse. Jeremiah 41:31 or 4:31. Sorry, Jeremiah 4, verse 31. For I heard a cry like one in labor, the anguish of one giving birth to her first child. The cry of the daughter of Zion, gasping for breath, stretching out her hands, saying, "Oh, now to me, for my soul faints before unalivers." Hopefully you guys are following along with that. I just don't want to say certain things. Last time we did this, I think we had some issues. So again, this is speaking about a woman travailing, and she's crying out that her soul faints because she's before people who are unalivers. Right? They're taking other people's lives, which we know what they're called in Scripture. So again, so far, all we're covering right now is Isaiah 54 verse 1. Sing, O barren, thou that did not bear, break forth into singing and cry aloud, that thou did not travail with child, for more are the children of the desolate than the children of the married wife, saith Yahweh. So, as we continue on here, Matthew 24, 8 through 9. But all of these things are the beginning of birth pains. So, we're seeing this woman who's in travail that we see throughout all the prophets in the book of Revelation it's spoken about. And now we're seeing the Messiah in Matthew 24, where the Messiah is explaining to the disciples what it's going to be like when he returns. So they're asking, what are the signs? What is it going to look like when you return? And he's telling them, he's giving them clues and insights as far as what that will look like. And he says, Matthew 24, verse 8, but all of these things are only the beginning of birth pains. Verse 9, then they will hand you over to persecute you and will unalive you. You will be hated by all nations because of my name's sake. All right, so hopefully that's pretty clear. All of these things, when we start to see these things, this is the beginning of the birth pains. Micah 5 verse 3. So he will arise. Actually, let me do this. 1 second. I want to make sure I'm reading consistently from the same. Therefore will he give them up until the time that she which travaileth hath brought forth. Then the remnant of his brethren shall return unto the children of Israel. So it's saying in verse 3 that this woman that's giving birth, once she's given birth, that this remnant shall be given up for a time. Remember the time that was given that we read prior. What did I do? And how long? Let me go back up and read it, because it was talking about this in Revelation 12:5. And she gave birth to a son, a man-child, who was to rule over all the nations with a rod of iron. And her child was snatched away to God and his throne. Then the woman fled into the wilderness, the church, the remnant, where she had a place prepared by Yahweh so that they might take care of her for 1,260 days. Okay? So this is again what Micah 5:3 is speaking about. Now we'll go into Micah 4:8 through 10. Let's see, let me go back. Micah 4:8 through 10. It says, O tower of the flock, the strong, hold of the daughter of Zion until thee shall it come, even the first dominion, the kingdom shall come to the daughter of Jerusalem. Now, why dost thou cry out aloud? Is there no king in thee? Is thy counselor perished? For pains have taken thee as a woman in labor. Be in pain and labor to bring forth, O daughter of Zion, like a woman in labor. For now shalt thou go forth out of the city, and thou shalt dwell in the field, and thou shalt go even to Babylon. There shall be delivered there. The Lord shall redeem thee from the hands of thy enemies. Now, we've gone into this in great detail before, exactly what this is speaking about. But remember, we were given through the prophecies that Yahweh would hand us over for a time, remember? And he would allow us to go chase after these gods and do these things. And then we see this prophecy that was given by the Messiah in the book of Luke, where he's speaking about this time of quietness where we would just have to sit and be still, where Yahweh's face would be turned away from us because of our transgressions, because of the things that we had done. And then on the other day when we were speaking about the reason why his face is turned away. But once he hears our cries, once he's hearing this second part of tribulation, the second measure of the Spirit being poured out, then the roles will slowly reverse. But we'll get there. I just don't want to jump too far ahead. But this is what I'm about to read is speaking about in Deuteronomy 4:28 through 30. It says, There you will serve man-made gods, wood and stone, which do not see, nor hear, nor eat, nor smell. But from there you will seek your God, and you will find him, when you seek him with all of your heart and with all of your soul. When you are in distress, and all of these things have come on you in the latter days, you will return to Yahweh and listen to his voice. So again, this is mid-tribulation. We have a nation ruling over us at this point that Yahweh is sending from the north, because Jacob and the remnant of Jacob, all of us, have been disobedient. We have not been following the ways of the Most High. We have not been keeping his commandments, and we have not been keeping the testimony of the Messiah. Well, I'm not going to say all of us. Some people are still fighting this. Some people are still saying, no, we don't have to keep his commandments. We don't have to keep the testimony of the Messiah. Yet the prophets are telling us a different story. So again, if we get off of track of what the prophets are speaking about, then we can find ourselves lost and searching for answers and being swayed by every wind of doctrine. However, if we keep ourselves focused on what Scripture says, then we're not lost. The prophets already foresaw all the stuff that was going to take place and the things that we're currently watching, the prophecies that we're watching come to pass. All right, now we're going to start in verse 2 of Isaiah chapter 54. This is, we'll read verse 2 and 3. Enlarge the place of thy tent, and let them stretch forth the curtains of thy habitations. Spare not, lengthen the cords, and strengthen the stakes. For thou shalt break forth on the right hand and on the left, and thy seed shall inherit the Gentiles, and make the desolate cities to be inhabited. All right, so let's break that down. We'll go into Psalms 91, verse 7. 1,000 may fall at your left side and 10,000 at your right hand, but it will not come near you. So again, we're going to have all of this persecution is going to be taking place, right? And again, you probably heard Jason talk about this, where 5 will chase, paraphrasing again, I don't know the exact way that it goes, but it's something along the lines of 5 will chase 100, 100 will chase 1,000, so on and so forth. Ezekiel 20, 46 through 48. Son of man, set thy face towards the south, and drop thy word towards the south, and prophesy against the forest land of the south field. And say to the forest land of the south, hear the word of the Lord. Thus saith the Lord God, behold, I will kindle a fire in thee, and it shall devour every green tree in thee, and every dry tree. The flaming flame shall not be quenched, and all of the faces from the south to the north shall be burned therein. And all flesh shall see that I, the Lord, have kindled it, and it shall not be quenched. So again, this is now, when we're talking about the wrath of the Most High, this is now that cup is starting to be filled up. Once that cup starts to overflow, that's when the remnant and the 144 start taking place and doing certain things, which I'm not going to get into today. But that wrath is not appointed for those that are keeping the commandments of Yahweh and walking in the testimony of his Son. However, the wrath that's being spoken of in Revelation that comes after this is exactly what's going to be taking place on the earth. And as many of you guys heard on the other teaching as well, was the parable of this seed of the sower. There's going to be many different nations that are coming along that are trying to eat up the word. They're trying to take the Torah from being delivered to where it needs to go, if I can say it that way. All right, so let's jump into, we'll read Isaiah 54, verse 4 through 6. Fear not, for thou shalt not be ashamed, neither shalt thou be confounded. For thou shalt not be put to shame, for thou shalt forget thy shame of thy youth, and thou shalt not remember the reproach of thy widowhood any more. So this, now we're seeing the change. There's a switch happening. For thy maker and thy husband, Yahweh is his name, and the Redeemer of the Holy One of Israel. The God of the whole earth shall he be called. For the Lord hath called thee as a woman forsaken and grieved in spirit, and a wife of youth, when thou was refused, saith Yahweh. So, we know for a fact that Israel was given a bill of divorcement because they refused to follow the Most High. Again, we're now fighting that same fight here on TikTok. It's the same battle going back and forth. People saying the law is done away with. All we have to do is confess the name of the Messiah, because the Messiah came to redeem those that were lost. The Gentile, people that still have a veil over their face, because they don't know Yahweh. They don't know his prophecies. They don't know the Old Testament because they've done away with it. They only know Paul's letters, which sound great if you're only reading Paul's letters. Yeah, it sounds like a fantasy gospel, but that's not the nature of Yahweh. And to be honest with you, I would much rather have the entire Bible and be reading from all of the truth to understand who God is, and not just taking Paul's letters and twisting and twisting and twisting until there's nothing left. Because then you have all these different doctrines now where we have to go either preaching the doctrine of Paul, or Paul's a false apostle, which I've heard a million times. And then people are lost because they don't understand Paul. Just like 2 Peter 3:15 through 16 warns us that those that don't understand the scriptures take Paul's letters and twist them to their own destruction, and they build an entire gospel on Paul. When Paul himself says, I wasn't crucified for you. The Messiah was. He's our example. So we can't keep talking about this gospel of Paul. All right, so we see a couple of things happening here. says, "Fear not, for thou shalt not be ashamed, neither confounded, for thou shalt not be put to shame, for thou shalt forget thy shame of thy youth." Meaning, the stuff that we've been doing will be forgotten. Yahweh will remove those things from us. "For thy maker is thy husband, the Lord of hosts." So, who is our husband? The one who created us. Not our Messiah, the one who created us. "The Lord of hosts is his name, and the Redeemer of the Holy One of Israel. The God of the whole earth shall he be called. For he, the Lord, hath called thee as a woman forsaken and grieved in spirit, and a wife of youth. Then thou was refused, saith Yahweh." So if we look at Isaiah 62 verse 5, it says, "For as a young man marries a virgin, so your sons will marry you. As a bridegroom rejoices over a bride, so your God will rejoice over you." So this is Yahweh's promise. If you go back to the prophecies in the Old Testament, like especially the book of Isaiah, you see that for all of this stuff that Israel was doing, Yahweh was upset, but his hand was still stretched out. He was still pleading with the people, "Come back. Come back." That's the purpose of the prophets being sent. They were sent to try to turn the hearts back to the Father, but the people's hearts were hardened. They were stiff-necked. They didn't want to hear truth. So they kept denying. So Yahweh was left with one option, which was to write a bill of divorcement. But he also had a plan set in motion prior to Satan even having his plan set in motion to redeem those that were lost. All right, now Isaiah 54, picking up verse 7 and 8. "For a small moment have I forsaken thee, but with great mercies will I gather thee. In a little wrath I hid my face from thee for a moment, but with everlasting kindness will I have mercy on thee, saith Yahweh thy Redeemer." Now, there's a couple things I want to add to this. I'm going to read some scriptures, but "for a small moment I have forsaken thee." So for Yahweh, it's been a small moment. Remember, I think it's Peter that warns us, "Brethren, be not ignorant of this one thing, that 1,000 years to us is one day to the Father," right? And then we see the Messiah saying that he was sent to preach the acceptable year of the Most High, to redeem those that were captive, to bring sight to the blind, to heal those that were wounded. Remember, it says 2 days would we be pretty much down and out, and on the third day he would raise us up. He wasn't speaking of 3 physical days. He was speaking of a 3,000-year period of time, and 2,000 years of that time are the 2,000 years the Messiah was speaking of, from the time of his death on the cross until mid-tribulation, when this second measure of the Spirit is being poured out. So there's a lot of context to this that I'm not adding into this teaching, but I think that many of you probably have already heard this and can follow along. Deuteronomy 31:17. "Then my anger will flare against them on that day, and I will abandon them and hide my face from them." So for those prophets and people on TikTok, all of you that are claiming that you're doing all these works in the name of the Most High, casting out demons, all of that stuff, I want you to understand something. Yahweh's face is currently turned away from us. For those that are walking in his commandments and keeping the testimony of his Son, we have a mediator and a high priest, and we can pray to him. But it says, for people that are sinning, Yahweh doesn't even hear your prayers, nor will he even consider them. So this means that we have to be walking, as we just read up a little further, where it told us that those 2 people that were mentioned were walking in perfection according to Yahweh. Were they perfect? Did they sin? Yes. But they were walking in perfection because they were keeping the commandments of God and his statutes, right? So this is what this is speaking about now. "I will abandon them and hide my face from them, so they will be devoured, and many evils and troubles will come on them. They will say on that day, isn't it because our God is not amongst us that these evils have come on us?" So many people believe, or will believe, that Yahweh has forgotten about us. And this also we see where people in the end times will mock and say, where's the sign of your God? Is he not coming? So the faith of many is going to grow very weary if you're not founded on truth. If you don't understand the truth of the word, you're going to be lost. And those that are waiting on a rapture and all of that stuff, you don't think that that's going to be like a gut blow that's going to knock the wind out of you, knock the wind out of your sails completely? Think about that for a second. You're waiting on Yahweh to rapture you out of here when he's telling you that correction starts at the house of the Most High. He's telling you that the remnant of Jacob is going to be corrected. He's telling you that he's not doing anything for anyone until mid-tribulation, and that's if you're crying out and if you're keeping his commandments and the testimony of his son Yeshua. Nothing else is going to happen for you. Even if you read through Matthew 24, it talks about all of the things that have to happen, and it says, after the tribulation of those days, then everybody will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds, not before. And we're also told that at the seventh trump, that's when we go, the seventh trump, not before. We go right before the wrath of God is poured out onto those that want to be disobedient, not a moment before. Hosea 3:3. And I said unto her, thou shalt abide for me many days. Thou shalt not play the harlot, and thou shalt not be for another man. So will I also be for thee. So for those of you that have gone through the book of Hosea, this book of Hosea explains. You want to know why God hates divorce so much? Because he's been through it. He understands what it feels like. This is why it says God hates divorce. So please read the entire book of Hosea and understand that the reason why Yahweh is now saying this, he's saying that the woman that was playing the harlot originally, God turned away from her and said that those people were no longer his people. But later on in the story, he says those people that were his people would be called his people again. So he brings them back. And the Messiah comes and says, I'm sent only for the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And he also says, but I have other sheep that are not of this fold. Okay, so understand, when you're reading through the book of Hosea, understand what's being said. All right, now we're going to pick back up Isaiah 54, verse 9. For this is as the waters of Noah unto me. For I have sworn that the waters of Noah should no more go over the earth. So I have sworn that I would not be wroth with thee, nor rebuke thee. Now, I'll give a couple more examples. I'm going to read Deuteronomy 4:30 through 34, but I'll give you a couple more examples of this because there's a lot to this, right? When you are in distress and all of these things have come on you in the latter days, now remember, this is why we have to go by the prophecies, because the prophets spoke of the days that we will be living in. This is the latter days. In the latter days, you will return to Yahweh and you will listen to his voice. For Yahweh is merciful and a merciful God. He will not abandon you or destroy you or forget the covenant with your fathers that he swore to them. So remember this, the two covenants that were made. Yahweh says in Jeremiah 31 through 34, he's talking about a new covenant that he'll make with the house of Israel and the house of Judah. Why? Because the house of Israel, or the 11 tribes, they were divorced. They were sent out. And then eventually Judah was as well after the Messiah was born through that bloodline. However, he's making a promise that he's going to bring them back. And that promise in Ezekiel, the two sticks becoming one stick again, is the house of Israel and the house of Judah becoming one stick, becoming one house. This is Israel becoming a nation. This is the new covenant being started. People are talking about that we're already in a covenant. It says that in the days when Yahweh makes this new covenant, there will be no man teaching his brother or his neighbor to know God, for all will know him from the least to the greatest. That hasn't happened yet. We can't say that everybody knows Yahweh from the least to the greatest. We know that for a fact. There's a lot of people that are preaching that have no idea what prophecy even means. Yet, they'll swear up and down that reading out of the Old Testament is evil. Because clearly God didn't speak through his prophets. Clearly God did not show his prophets what the end times would be like. So why would we listen to them? I don't understand the logic, people. I really don't. I'm catching glimpses of the comments here where people are just still sideways about the Old Testament. I don't understand it. It's wild to me. All right. Isaiah 54:10. For the mountains shall depart and the hills shall be removed, but my kindness shall not depart from thee. Neither shall the covenant of my peace be removed, saith the Lord that hath mercy on thee. So let's look at Ezekiel 37:26 through 27. I will cut a covenant of peace with them. It shall be an everlasting covenant with them, meaning it will never end. I will give them and multiply them. I will set them up a sanctuary among them forever. My dwelling place will be over them, and I will be their God, and they will be my people. Now, let me ask you a question. Does that sound familiar? Let's go read something really quickly for those of you that just are just detesting prophecy. Because if you actually read the prophets, you'll understand where this comes from and how the prophets tell us reveal the book of Revelation to us. Revelation 21. And I saw a new heaven and a new earth. The first heaven and the first earth were passed away, and there was no more sea, no more firmament. And John saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down from Yahweh out of heaven, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. Why prepared as a bride adorned for her husband? Because we're currently divorced. We're currently separated from God because we would not listen. We would not hearken to his voice. So for those of you that are looking forward to the 1,000-year millennial reign, and for those of you that are looking forward to seeing God again, if you don't believe that we have to keep the commandments of God, you better pay close attention to what I'm about to read. And I heard a great voice out of heaven saying, Behold, the tabernacle of Yahweh is with men, and he will dwell with them, and they shall be his people, and God himself shall be with them and be their God. Now, question, before this happens, who are we on the new earth with? The Messiah, correct? So why is it saying that now when John looks up that he's seeing Yahweh coming down with New Jerusalem, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband? And then it goes on to say this, and God shall wipe away all their tears from their eyes, and there shall be no more death, neither sorrow nor crying, neither shall there be any more pain, for the former things have passed away. And he that sat upon the throne said, Behold, I make all things new. And he said unto me, Write, for these things and these words are true and faithful. And he said to me, It is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. I will give unto them that is athirst of the fountain of the water of life freely. He that overcometh shall inherit all things, and I will be his God, and he shall be called my son. That's not my opinion, guys. That's right out of Revelation chapter 21. And there's only 22 chapters in that book. So go figure. What we just read, tell God that his prophets are wrong. If you don't agree with prophecy, go tell God that his prophets are wrong. Because this is what he's saying. I will cut a covenant of peace with them. It shall be an everlasting covenant. I will give to them and multiply them. I will set up my sanctuary, not a sanctuary built by human hands that's taking place in a land where people are calling themselves Jews that are not, but do lie, that don't believe in the return of the Messiah. We've been warned. But he says he will set up a sanctuary among them forever. A dwelling place will be over them, and I will be their God, and they will be my people. When does that happen? Well, we just read it in Revelation 21. Ezekiel 34:25. I will make a new covenant of peace with them. I will remove the evil beasts from the land, so that they may dwell safely in the wilderness and sleep in the forest. For those of you that understand what these evil beasts are, this is a promise of peace for us. This is a promise that after that 3.5 years of tribulation, that this northern army will rule over us. We will be set free. And for those of you that have said, oh, this has already happened, X, Y, and Z, the Messiah returns in 70 AD, keep believing that as prophecies unfolding right before our eyes. Keep believing that as we're watching nations come forward and making claims to being something that they're not. Because you're not going to outsmart God. There's a reason why the water levels are receding. People are starting to find artifacts and starting to find proofs that there's only one true God on this earth. All right, let's see. Now, verse 11, Isaiah 54, verse 11. O thou afflicted, tossed with the tempest and not comforted, behold, I will lay thy stones with fair colors and thy foundations with sapphires. Now, again, this can be found in the book of Revelation. Let me just jump to that before. Actually, let me read this first. Zephaniah 3:13. The remnant of Israel will do no injustice, nor will they tell lies, nor will deceitful tongues be found in their mouths. For they will graze and lie down, and no one will make them afraid. Did we not just read that? Did we not just read that? Let me go back. It says, and he said to me, I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end, and I will give unto them that is of a thirst of the water of life freely. He that overcometh shall inherit all things, and I will be his God, and he shall be my son. But the fearful and the unbelieving and the abominable and the murderers and the whoremongers and the sorcerers and the idolaters and the liars shall have their part in the lake which burneth with fire and brimstone, which is the second death. So for those of you that are saying that there's no hell, you better stop preaching that, because there most certainly is one. Now, I want to point something else out. What did he just say? Let me go back and read this really quickly. I want you to hear this very closely. O thou afflicted, tossed and tempted, and with tempest, and not comforted, behold, I will lay thy stones with fair colors, and thy foundations with sapphire. Now, what is he talking about? What is he speaking about? New Jerusalem. Listen to this. And the wall, this is Revelation 21:14. And the walls of this city had 12 foundations, and in them the name of the 12 apostles of the Lamb. Now, if you go on and you finish reading what this city foundation, the walls of this city are made of, verse 19, and the foundations of the wall of the city were garnished with manners of precious stones. The first was foundations of jasper, the second of sapphire, the third chalcedonian, the fourth emerald. Are you guys starting to understand there were 12 stones on the Levitical priest breastplate before they would go into the Holy of Holies? These 12 stones represent the 12 tribes. 12,000 from each tribe, the 144, which make up New Jerusalem. This is what's being spoken of. These are all promises by Yahweh through the prophets. But if you do away with the Old Testament, I'm telling you right now, you're doing away with your understanding of the word. Zephaniah 3:19 through 20. Behold, at that time I will deal with all who oppress you. I will save the lame and gather the outcast. I will make them praise and the name throughout all the land where they suffered shame. At that time I will bring you, at that time I will gather you. For I will give you renown and glory among all the people of the earth when I restore your captives before your eyes, declares Yahweh. So what is this speaking of? We're talking about the birth of the 144,000. Isaiah 54:12, verse 12 and 13. And I will make thy widows of gates, and thy gates of carbuncles, and thy borders of pleasant stones. We just read that, right? And all the children shall be taught of Yahweh. The great shall be peace. Great shall be the peace of the children. Why is he saying this? Because we will be in New Jerusalem. And New Jerusalem is made up of the 144, of the 12 elders and Yeshua. This is New Jerusalem. This is the promise that will be given to the remnant, right? But it's telling us here how it's going to look. And I will make the windows and the gates of carbuncles, and the borders of pleasant stones. Who is that? The 144,000. 12,000 from each tribe. They become our new priesthood. They become those who are going to teach us the ways that God wanted to teach Moses and the people that were at Mount Sinai, but they didn't want to listen. Remember, they were too afraid to listen to God, and God had many, many more things that he wanted to share, but they didn't want to listen. Isaiah 48:17 through 18. Thus saith Yahweh your Redeemer, the Holy One of Israel. I am Yahweh your God, who teaches you to profit, who leads you in the way that you should go. If only you had listened to my commandments, then your peace would be like a river, and your righteousness like the waves of the sea. That's pretty deep. That's pretty deep, given the fact that we've already gone over. We're only in verse 14. We're just now getting ready to read verses 14 through 16 from Isaiah 54. For those of you that are just coming in, I'll have this entire teaching posted on my YouTube channel once we're done, which we're almost done. Don't feel like you're missing anything. The link is in the bio. Please check that out if you're interested. If you want to catch back up on the scriptures that I've given, or you want to go read them in context, you'll be able to do this with every page of scripture. This is just one page of scripture that we're breaking down. We can do this with every single page, and then you'll start being able to understand how the prophecies connect and how the prophets tell us the story of the book of Revelation. All right, verse 14. In righteousness shalt thou be established. Thou shalt be far from oppression, for thou shalt not fear, and from the terror, for it shall not come near thee. What did it just say? That all of these things will be outside of the gates. In other words, they're going to be playing their part in the lake of fire. They're not going to be bothering us anymore. Behold, they shall surely gather together, but not by me. Whosoever shall gather together against thee shall fall for thy sake. Behold, I have created the smith that bloweth the coals into the fire, and bringeth forth an instrument for his work. And I have created the waster to destroy. So, we all know that Yahweh clearly says he created good and evil, but he did it for good reason. He also gave his sons in heaven, the B'nai Ha Elohim, or the Ben Elohim, the sons of God, the angels in heaven, he gave them free will. But 200 of them chose to come down and work against Yahweh. And what does Yahweh tell them? You foolish ones. You thought you knew all the things of heaven, but you don't. He didn't share everything he knew. He shared some of the things that he knew. And then they thought, even in their own minds, even when we're looking at Nimrod and the Tower of Babel, they had a whole plan to build a tower that was so wide in circumference, it took 3 days to walk from one side of it to the other, and it took a year to take mortar and bricks to the top of it. That's how tall it was. And their plan was to infiltrate heaven and try to take God over and unalive him. This is what they were thinking, because they were the offspring of who? Those who came down and mixed with the daughters of man. The sons of God, the B'nai Ha Elohim, came down and mixed with the daughters of man, and they bore giants. This is who Yahweh's telling Moses and all of the people in the Old Testament to go into their cities and destroy them, and to have no mercy, to slay all, man, woman, child, because they were never his creation. They were beasts created by the fallen. This is what we have to remember. God is not a God that he should lie, nor a man that he should repent. So we have to understand, when Yahweh's speaking, he's always speaking from a place of truth. It's just people that don't understand his word that speak against him. All right, so Deuteronomy 28:49 through 50. Yahweh will raise up a nation against you from far away, from the end of the earth, just as the eagle swoops down, a nation whose language you will not understand. Brazen-faced nation that will not respect the old, nor be gracious to the young. This is the nation from the north. Once that bottomless pit opens, and those spirits go into this nation that will be sent from the north to correct Jacob, the remnant. This is what Yahweh is talking about in Deuteronomy 28:49 through 50. Psalms 114:1. When Israel came out of Egypt, Jacob's house, from a people foreign speaking. So when Israel was in Egypt, many people don't understand this, and I'm not going to go too far into depth, but remember, there are a lot of people that are talking about how they came here to America, and how the people that brought them here persecuted them and whatnot. Let me explain something to you. That persecution started back when Israel was enslaved by the very people who are making these claims. So keep that in mind. But this is why it's saying we're not going to understand their speech. They're going to be a people that will have no respect for the old, nor will they be gracious to the young. And this is a soft version of how I, the King James, because I don't want to get kicked off for what I'm saying. Isaiah 47:6. I was angry with my people. I profaned my heritage. I gave them into your hand, but you showed them no mercy. You make your yoke very heavy on the aged. Remember, as the Messiah is going through the New Testament, the scribes and the Pharisees are the ones that are placing these hard burdens on the shoulders of men. And then they're asking the Messiah, why aren't you keeping the commandments? And Yahweh says, or Yeshua says, why aren't you keeping the commandments of my Father? You're talking about the commandments of men, and I'm here to show you and walk out the commandments that my Father gave you, not the heavy burdens that you're placing on men's shoulders. That is what people are talking about, like Jason said, about filthy rags. The works of filthy rags are your own works, not the works of Yahweh's law. Yahweh's law is perfect. He says it's not far from you, that it's your life. He doesn't change. So unless he changed his word and we didn't know about it, then don't keep preaching that. Because unless you understand the truth of the word and how it sanctifies you and it allows you to walk perfectly like we were reading about earlier, that's how you become perfect, by walking in the will of the Father. Yahweh would have never said, be perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect. Or I shouldn't say Yahweh, but his word says that for a reason. It's so that you can walk in perfection. Jeremiah 6:22 through 26. Thus saith Yahweh, look, a people coming from the northern land, a great nation roused from the ends of the earth. They are armed with bow and spear, cruel and no compassion. They sound like the roaring sea. They ride on horses as men in battle formation against you, daughter of Zion. We have heard of their fame. Our hands hang limp, anguish, and gripped us pain like a woman in labor. All right, so this woman in labor, we've spoken about this. Do not go out in the field or walk in the road, since the enemy has a sword, their terror on every side. Daughter of my people, put on sackcloth and roll in ashes, mourn as for the only son with bitter lamentation, for suddenly the destroyer will come upon us. Revelation chapter 9. And the fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven, and it was given to him the key of the bottomless pit. And he opened the bottomless pit, and there arose a smoke out of the pit, and the smoke of a great furnace. And the sun and the air were darkened by reason of the smoke of the pit. And there came out of the smoke locusts upon the earth. And unto them was given power, as the scorpions of the earth have power. This is why the Messiah told you that he gave his children the power to tread on serpents and scorpions. This northern army is what's being spoken about right here in Revelation chapter 9. How do we know that? Because it tells us that they are men that are dressed with breastplates of iron. It tells us that they're going to be in great formation, that they're going to be riding on horses. Go through and read Revelation 9 and understand that when Satan opens that bottomless pit, that these spirits that come out, they're not going to be locusts, they're not bugs. They're spirits that go into certain nations, and then those nations are going to rule over us for 3.5 years, just as we just read through a little higher up. So understand, the prophets are telling us what's going to take place in our time, but yet we have people telling us, the Old Testament's not for us, do away with it. All we need is the letters of Paul. Really, are the letters of Paul going to get you through this? I don't think so. I would pay very close attention. Now, picking up Isaiah 54 verse 17. No weapon that is formed against thee shall prosper, and every tongue that shall rise against thee in judgment thou shalt condemn. This is the heritage of the servants of Yahweh, and their righteousness is of me, saith Yahweh. So this is talking about the Messiah and the 144,000. Remember, those that are with the Messiah will rule and reign with an iron scepter. That iron scepter is the 144,000 according to the prophecies that we were just reading from, right? Isaiah 42, behold my servant, whom I uphold, my chosen one, in whom my soul delights. I have put my spirit on him. He will bring justice to the nations. What did we read up top in Revelation? That this Lamb was going to be standing on Mount Zion, and next to him 144,000. This is the rod of iron that's being spoken of. Ezekiel 37:24. My servant David will be king over them. They will have one shepherd. They will walk in my ordinances and observe my rulings and do them. So again, I have to ask, let me stop right here for just a second. I have to ask, if the people in the Old Testament, the Israelites in the Old Testament, were required to keep the law, they knew the law, they raised their children to know the law, they memorized the Torah, why would we now say that because the Messiah came to do away with the bill of divorcement that was given to us, that we no longer have to follow the law of the Most High and keep the Sabbath day holy if we're the children of Israel? Think about that for a second. Why would Yahweh tell us that we're going to be picking all these things back up during the 1,000-year millennial reign? All of the things and more. This is the purpose of the 1,000-year millennial reign, so the Messiah can clean us up. Why? Because of what we read out of Revelation 21, 1 through 5. New Jerusalem is coming down as a bride adorned for her husband. Correct? So, let's continue reading. Isaiah 49, 1 through 10. Listen to me, islands. Pay attention, people from far away. Yahweh called me from the womb. From my mother's belly he named me. He made my mouth like a sharp sword. Think about who this is talking about. In the shadow of his hand he hid me. He made me a polished arrow. Remember we were talking about arrows yesterday being shot out when we were talking to the other guy that was on the live with us? This is exactly what we were trying to show him, but he wasn't listening. He has hidden me in his quiver. Who is the... Yahweh's talking all throughout the prophets about shooting these arrows out of his quiver. Enoch sees this quiver with the arrows and the sword in the chapters that we covered when Enoch sees and is taken up in this vision, right? He said to me, you are my servant, Israel, in whom I will be glorified. But I said, I have labored in vain. I have spent my strength for nothing and faulty, yet surely the justice due to me with Adonai and my reward with my God. So now, says Yahweh, who formed me from the womb to be his servant, to bring Jacob back to him, to gather Israel back to him. For I am honored in the eyes of Yahweh, and my God has become my strength. So he says, Is it too thrifting of a thing that you should be my servant to raise up the tribes of Jacob and restore the preserved ones of Israel, so that I will give you as a light for the nations, that you should be my salvation till the end of the earth? Thus saith Yahweh, the Redeemer of Israel, their Holy One, to the one despised, in the one the nation abhors, to the servant of the ruler. Kings will see and arise, princes will also bow down, because of Yahweh who is faithful, the Holy One of Israel who has chosen you. Thus saith Yahweh, in a time of favor I will answer you, in the day of salvation I will help you. I will keep you and give you as a covenant to the people, to restore the land, to make the possessed its desolate inheritances. Says to the prisoners, come out, to those in the darkness be shown. Along the roads they will graze. Their pastures will be on the barren heights. They will not hunger or thirst, nor scorching wind, sun strike them, nor will their compassionate one be led them, and will guide them by the springs of water. So this is speaking of the Messiah and the 144,000. So again, I'm going to give you the Isaiah 49, 1 through 10. Go read that and understand that as you're reading through it, listen to what's being spoken and understand it is telling us about the Messiah and the 144,000. And again, this goes with Revelation 12. And there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet. And upon her head was a crown of 12 stars. And she being with child, travailing in birth and pain to be delivered. And there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns on his head. And he drew a third part of the stars of heaven, and did cast them down to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman, was ready to be delivered, to devour the child as soon as it was to be born. And she brought forth a man-child, who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron. Who is that man-child? The Messiah. Who is the iron rod? The 144,000. And her child was caught up to God and to his throne. And the woman fled in the wilderness. The church, this is the church, where she had a place prepared of Yahweh, that they should feed her for 1,260 days. So again, we're seeing the 144,000, the rod of iron, in the new temple, New Jerusalem. So as we go through this, let me see where I'm at for time's sake. All right, yeah, we're almost through this, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to end the live, and then I'm going to hop right back on. But I want to be able to have this live separate from the one that's going on to YouTube, because I want this teaching to be specifically for the YouTube channel, because many of you guys already went through this with us, but the people on YouTube haven't got to hear this yet. This will be new for them. Okay, so now again, we're talking about the 144,000, the rod of iron, in the new temple. So we're going to start in Numbers 3, verse 41. Set the Levites apart for me in this place of all the firstborn of Israel, and the livestock of the Levites in this place are all the firstborn of Israel, for I am Yahweh. Numbers 3:45. Take the Levites in place of the firstborn of all of Israel, and the livestock of the Levites in place of the livestock. The Levites will be mine. I am Yahweh. So remember when I was talking about this in the very beginning. The old Levitical priesthood in the Old Testament, right here we're seeing very clearly Yahweh says they are his. This is why they don't have an inheritance. This is why the other 12 tribes were given an inheritance, but the Levites were not. They are Yahweh's first fruits. They're his. In the same way Yeshua has his first fruits, the 144,000. So we have to understand that the old way of doing things, the old Levitical priesthood, was done away with. There's no longer a temple. So when people are asking you, well, if you keep the law, then how come you're not sacrificing animals? How come you're not doing this? How come you're not doing that? It's because they completely skip over the book of Hebrews and they don't understand the new priesthood because of what the Messiah did. The Messiah came to allow us to have communication. He's our mediator, our high priest. He is now what the Levites were. But it'll be even more so when he has the 144 ruling and reigning on the new earth with him. The 144 become this new priesthood that were the Levitical priests. I hope that makes sense. So, once we see this, again, I'm going to reread what we read in the very beginning in Revelation 14, 1 through 5. And look, and lo, a lamb stood on Mount Zion. Who is this lamb? The Messiah. And with him 144,000. Who are the 144,000? The rod of iron, having his Father's name written on their foreheads. Remember, Matthew 24, the seal of the living God is put on their foreheads. And I heard a voice from heaven, and a voice of many waters as the voice of a great thunder, and I heard the voice of the harpers harping with their harps, the song of Moses. This is the new song. As they sung, as it were, a new song before the throne, and before the beast, and before the elders. No man could learn that song but the 144,000, which were redeemed from the earth. So for those that are saying the 144,000 or cells in your head and all of these other theories, that's not what Scripture says. Scripture says they are redeemed from the earth. These are a literal 144,000. 12,000 from each tribe that are bought free, just like the Levites that I just read were bought free. So let's continue on. Let me just make sure I didn't skip over this. Here, yeah, I did skip over this. Let me go back over Numbers again. Numbers 8:16, verse 17. For every firstborn among Israel is mine, whether human or animal. On the day I struck down the firstborn of the land of Egypt, I sanctified them for myself. So I am taking the Levites in place of the firstborn of Israel. That's super important. I didn't mean to skip that before I jumped into Revelation, but remember this, guys. Listen to this very closely. Do you remember when in all of the stories, once Satan found out that there was one that was going to be sent to the land? Understand this. They were taking, the Egyptians were taking the firstborns and they were throwing them in the water, right? They were throwing the babies of Israel in the water if they were born as men, the male child, right? So what does Yahweh do at the end of that story? He literally does the same thing to the Egyptians as they did to the children of Israel. How did they all die? They were chasing Moses through the Red Sea, and what did Yahweh do to them? He drowned them in water, all of them, the same way that they were doing to his children. So again, all of this stuff goes super deep. My hopes is that as I'm pointing in this direction that you guys are seeing as we've gone through this, and again, I'm going to post this up on YouTube. I want you guys to see that all of this stuff that's being spoken about is prophetical language, but there's so many people that are saying that the 144 are not going to be from the earth, which there's plenty of scripture we could go through providing proof for that as well. But understand that this daughter of Zion, or this remnant of Israel that's being spoken about, is in Revelation 12. This is what we were reading earlier. I'm going to read it one more time. And there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. And she, being with child, travailed in birth, and pain to be delivered. And there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a red dragon having 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns upon his head. And he drew a third part of the stars of heaven, and did cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood up before the woman, which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born. So this was taking place in many different, this is prophetic, but also this was taking place in many different times throughout Scripture. When King Herod was ruling, when the Egyptians were throwing people in the water, the firstborn in the water, there was a lot of this taking place. And she brought forth a man-child who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron, and her child was caught up to God in his throne. So we know who this is speaking about, but it's also speaking about something more prophetically deep. And the woman fled into the wilderness, where she had a place prepared of Yahweh, that they should feed her there for 1,260 days. And from out of the mouth of the serpent he spewed water like a river after the woman, in order to sweep her away with a flood. But the earth came to aid the woman, the church. This is the period of tribulation we're talking about. And the earth opened its mouth and swallowed the river. This is an attack from Satan, that the dragon spewed from his mouth. So the dragon became let me put it the other way. The dragon was wroth with the woman, and went to make war with the remnant of her seed, meaning the offspring of her seed, those who keep the commandments of Yahweh and hold to the testimony of Yeshua. So we know this is speaking of after the fact. This is after Yeshua came, because it's talking about keeping the testimony of Yeshua. And verse 18, and he stood on the shore of the sea. So there's a hierarchy that's taking place here. We see that hierarchy that we've gone over before, and you guys have heard Jason say this many times. We have Yahweh, we have the Messiah, we have the 7 archangels, we have the elders, we have the 12 tribes, we have the 12 apostles, we have the 144, which are the Messiah's inheritance, and then we have the remnant. Just like we have Yahweh, the son of Yahweh, Yeshua, the husband, the wife, and the child. Yahweh has an order for everything that he does.